Is to trying to figure out ways to stop the marginalization that occurs from people who often end up into extremist ideologies. Sort of this idea of where does that extremist ideology start? How can we target it early on in somebody's life to eliminate the threat from possibly occurring? You mentioned that there's going to be a focus on domestic priorities. That is what day one is about. Tomorrow will be more hearing from leaders in various fields. And on the third day, it'll be more of an international focus, if you will. Now, there's a lot of, shall we say, early criticism of this summit from conservatives, saying that this has come much too late. This has shown that the administration was ill-equipped to handle ISIS and the threat that's presented. There's also criticism from conservatives that this summit is not adequately addressing the term radical Islam. The White House is saying, look, extremism happens over all different types of faiths. We're not going to single any faith out. We're just trying to eliminate extremism where it is. That has not satisfied a lot of conservatives. Expect that to be a sort of back and forth between the White House and conservatives throughout the duration of this summit. As far as what exactly they're going to do, Craig, they're going to review a few of these pilot programs that have been in place in Boston, Minneapolis, and Los Angeles over the last 18 or so months, I'm told, and sort of see what in fact worked in those cities in terms of trying to prevent extremism and prevent marginalization. So a lot of talking, a lot of discussions. President Obama will speak tomorrow. We expect him to speak a second time on Thursday. So there'll be some big name players. Joe Biden apparently is going to moderate one of these discussions. But from what we actually will hear, probably get more of that tomorrow, Craig.
Luke Russert Force at the White House on this Tuesday. Luke, thank you as always, sir. Evan Kohlmann is here, NBC News terrorism analyst. Perhaps you should be at that conference in D.C. Let's start where Luke just left off. This idea that you can prevent homegrown terrorism. Is that a realistic expectation? Are there things that governments can do, whether they be federally or on a micro level, municipalities?
Well, look, there are certainly things that the U.S. government, local governments, other governments can do to try to stem this tide. But to start off with, I think it's very important to understand there is no solution that's going to end this problem. And I'm afraid that this conference that's down at the White House right now is more about face saving and it's more about appearances than it is really about concrete suggestions. Because if there was some kind of immediate answer in terms of how to solve this problem, it would have been done already. There have been conferences like this all around the world for years. I've participated in them. The United Nations, other NGOs, governments have organized them. Even in Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia has organized them. There is no solution that's going to stop every single lone wolf attack. These folks are needles in the haystack, trying to understand their radicalization process, trying to understand the ones that actually end up taking action from the broader market. Right. Is a very difficult science, and it's not something that anyone really has a full handle over right now. If we did, you wouldn't see Fort Hood. You wouldn't see the attacks in Paris. You wouldn't see incidents like this taking place, not at the scale we're seeing.
You paint a grim picture, my friend. It would seem then that what we can do, or what we are left to do then, is to simply identify and track. I mean, is that our best defense, so to speak?
Well, look, there are a number of different things we can do. Number one, certainly identifying and tracking is valuable, right? But how do we do that? Unfortunately, you're talking about people that are not necessarily crossing international boundaries. They're not necessarily traveling to Syria or Afghanistan. So how do we pick up on these people? And this is one area where maybe we'll see some progress in terms of what's happening at the White House right now, which is galvanizing community awareness and response. Because ultimately, these lone wolf extremists, 99 times out of 100, we find out about them because of the fact that someone in their community, either in their family, at a local mosque, at a community center, something has said, look, this person, there's something wrong. Yeah. And that's what we need to encourage. And if this conference achieves that, it's not going to stop homegrown terrorism, but it's a step in the right direction.
From the aforementioned Congressional Research Service report, it lays out a few factors that could contribute to homegrown terror. Among them, extremism like intermediaries, social networks, the internet, jailhouse jihadism. Explain a little bit of those things, especially this jailhouse jihadism.
Yeah, this is something that's happened for years. I mean, this goes back long before the internet. This goes back into the 1990s, where you saw in France a number of the world's most famous terrorists were groomed and were recruited inside of prison by mingling with other jihadists. It was an unfortunate mistake that was once made, although it's not unusual. And in Brazil, you see the same thing with organized organized crime there. Unfortunately, what's happened is that you have these young guys that come into prison 2021. They don't know a thing about life. They don't know a thing about Islam. And they come into contact with someone that appears to have more knowledge than them, someone who manipulates them and gives them a purpose, gives them a reason. So we need to catch these folks when they come out of prison and give them an alternative to trying to die on the battlefield or murdering people as being their raison d'etre, their reason to be. And I think that's the key here. We have to give people alternatives, and we have to make sure we don't alienate folks. Most of those who have gone on to join homegrown groups or have tried radicalizing themselves here in this country have felt the deep sense of alienation in American society. They're Americans, they're born here. There's something wrong, and we have to make sure as a country we're not doing things to encourage that sense of alienation.
Really quickly before I let you go, I don't know if you know the answer to this question. According to the report, there was this uptick after April 2009. Any idea why there would have been an uptick that particular year?
There's a number of different reasons that possibly go into this. I think one of the reasons that you have to acknowledge is that social media, starting about 2008 and 2009, took a big jump forward. YouTube became a household name. Facebook became a household name. And it's really kind of these jumps up where all of a sudden this social media was available not just to a small elite audience on the internet, but a wide network of people, even those who had no previous contact with a terrorist group. So even if you didn't speak Arabic, even if you didn't have a name and a password for a top-tier Al-Qaeda web forum, all of a sudden that video propaganda, those images, the recruitment call, it was available to you.
The internet has made homegrown terrorism far more approachable.
I think arguably, yeah. I think it's made it's certainly increased the available audience that can be recruited into this, and I think that's certainly got to be one of the factors that you can attribute that change to.
Evan Kohlmann, I always learn something from you when you're on television. I don't say that about a lot of our guests.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As we've been talking about here, groups like ISIS, like Boko Haram, they've been recruiting fighters for their cause on Twitter. If you think social media platforms should do more to stop violent extremism, there's something you can do. For this week's call to action, my good friend Ronan wants you to sign the Counter Extremism Project's petition. You can find it on our website. You can join their effort to hold Twitter responsible for quickly shutting down accounts that spread content aimed at radicalizing and recruiting youth. You can also tweet us with the hashtag #RoNation. There are legitimate free speech questions about some content, but those gray areas do not excuse a lack of enforcement against direct calls for murder. More can be done, and you can help lend your voice. We'll keep track of those responses. We'll share those responses with you at the end of the week.